All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining this week. We are going to be talking about revenue per hour this week. So really going to kind of jump deeply into revenue per hour, discuss how it impacts the business and why it's such an important metric. Along the way, I'll try to explain why we did some things that we did when building LMN to really sort of unlock this opportunity in your business. So getting started, first off, I'll just actually back up a minute. I'm going to save the questions till the end. So go ahead and put your questions up in the chat as we go, just so that you don't forget them at the end. And I'll cover all of the questions at once as we get to that half-hour point here today, and hopefully get through all the questions in about 15 minutes or so. So revenue per hour, definition, pretty straightforward. It's basically the total revenue that an employee is going to produce as they work throughout the day, including labor, equipment, and material. So when we add up all of the equipment and material that they utilize and we invoice our customers for, the total revenue that they're producing, factoring everything, is revenue per hour. And so the big opportunity is really finding work that has a higher revenue per hour, which is then obviously recovering more overhead, since we charge overhead recovery on all of these components, labor, equipment, and material. And it's also giving us a lot more profit. As we have more revenue and a fixed profit margin, we're getting more and more profit from every hour worked. So jobs with more equipment or more expensive materials or more materials tend to produce much higher revenue. So ultimately, what we're going to try to talk about over the next half hour is how to unlock that opportunity in your business by doing things a little bit differently. And along the way, I'll kind of explain how LMN can help. So ultimately, regardless of whether it's install, snow, landscaping, irrigation, or tree work, whatever the service or product happens to be, we can really look at changing our pricing and packaging to really unlock the opportunity with revenue per hour. And many times over the years, teaching contractors how to optimize the business, how to get more profitable, recover more overhead, and unlock this greater revenue per hour, a lot of times people sort of question because of the type of business they do. So it could be, how do I get more revenue per hour in maintenance? Or how do I get more revenue per hour in installation or in other aspects of the business like snow? Today, I'm going to kind of touch on a few examples to kind of clarify that a little bit more, but hopefully you can really understand the impact that this metric has by the end of this discussion and how to optimize it. On an ongoing basis, we've got some mastermind sessions that we're holding. These are 2-day workshops that we have upcoming. Definitely join us for one of those. We really dive into this metric really deeply as we go through those events. So is there opportunity? Well, yes, absolutely. This is your chance to really look at revenue per hour. So be here, be present, kind of focus with me on this, and trust me, it will mean something by the time we're finished. So the impact of revenue per hour in your business is real. Ultimately, we want to find a way to be able to pay our staff more money, recover overhead faster, invest in overhead so that we can scale the business, get better at everything we do. And I always feel that when we produce more revenue with each employee for every hour they're working, or more revenue on the annual year, it allows us to do everything better. We can pay our staff better. We can ultimately afford better equipment. We can do all of our day-to-day work better when we've got well-trained staff that are paid a little bit better and they're motivated to produce more. So how do we get there? We're going to talk about that today. Ultimately, the impact of revenue per hour looks like this in most businesses. And so this is just an example. You can kind of scale it up or down pretty easily based on the number of employees that you have. But many companies look like the company on the left. So if you've got 10 employees and they're working 15 hours per year, if the invoiced revenue per hour is $73, and again, This is labor, material, and equipment combined. So this is quite common to see rates in around this range, $73 per hour. And then, ultimately with those 10 employees, we're working a total of 15,000 hours in the company. That gives us gross revenue of $1,095,000. With a 40% gross profit, that gives you $438,000. Then obviously we got to pay our overhead in the case of 30%, which is a pretty typical overhead in the industry. That would be another $328,500, and that leaves us with a net profit of 10% or $109,000. Now, that's pretty typical. We see this all the time, and that's actually a pretty healthy profit for a company of that size if the employees were being paid well and the owner was being paid a fair wage. But I also see many companies which kind of stand out, and those companies that stand out always have one thing in common. And I've taught thousands of contractors how to budget and how to estimate over the years, and we have thousands of companies using LMN every day. I can tell you the standout companies always have one thing in common. They have much higher revenue per hour, and this allows them to run a company that is really difficult to compete with, and ultimately a lot more profitable for the owner and anybody involved in ownership, and definitely for the employees, because the employees can be paid much more money when there's more revenue for every hour worked. So it's kind of the secret to unlocking profit, unlocking higher wages, and ultimately building a company that's really difficult to compete with. Because what tends to happen with companies with higher revenue per hour, as the revenue scales, the overhead drops as a percentage of sales, and these companies get really hard to compete with. Now, on the right, the company that you want to be, it looks a little different than on the left. Here, what we see is labor, material, and equipment combined at $125 an hour versus $73. So a few tweaks to pricing, packaging, the type of materials you're installing, the way that you allow for extras to be billed, all of these things can lead to these changes. And so I'm going to talk about how to do that next. But for now, just picture an increase in revenue per hour going up to $125 per hour. On the same number of hours, revenue jumps exponentially. We almost double the revenue here. So we get up to 1.875 with the same number of employees. And this is often a big question in workshops as I teach people how to budget and estimate. They always want to add more crews. And my first comment is always, let's get the billing right. Let's make sure that we're optimizing revenue per hour before you go out and buy more trucks, add more crews, and keep selling low-priced work that's really not optimizing the opportunity in the landscape industry. And so here you see the same size company optimized with higher revenue per hour, producing 1.875 million. With a 40% gross profit, that's 750,000. Overhead drops exponentially. And why does it drop to 17.5%? Well, it drops because the overhead doesn't change just because we're getting more revenue per hour, which is kind of cool. That's where the big opportunity comes in on bottom line net profit. 22.5% instead of 10%. So not only are we selling more dollars every time with revenue per hour, but we're actually increasing our opportunity on our profit margin because overhead's falling. And that's really why revenue per hour is the secret metric that most companies need to really unlock. It's the easiest one to train staff on how to optimize, both on the estimating side and on the production side. We're going to talk about how to do that throughout this presentation here today. And in our 2-day mastermind workshops that we have in the coming months, we go really deeply into how to optimize this and really unlock the opportunity from a revenue and efficiency perspective long term. So in the maintenance business, pricing and packaging really matters. I can't say how many times I've seen companies show up to workshops, they're going through a budget, we start to run a few estimating exercises, and almost immediately they say to me, there must be something wrong with the software. I can't charge this much and stay in business. Then I look at their profit margin and I almost always see that they're not making enough money to stay in business as it is. And really what happens is there's an awareness that the price matters. But then secondly, I think oftentimes companies that start using the software realize that the packaging matters. And when I say packaging, what really matters here is when you start to put a price together for a customer for a base monthly fee, for example, we also have to think of ways that we can get extra revenue that we can kind of stack into the equation and get more revenue for each hour worked. And so the way that we do that is coming in with a nice competitive price for the weekly service, I call that mowing, trimming, the basics, but then adding in lots of options into the contract pricing that includes additional fees for disposal, for example. And this could be a fee per visit. It could be a fee per bag or per load of material that you're removing from a site. Could be automatic opt-in for mulching, whether it's per bag or per yard, depending on the type of project or contract you're servicing. Then it's fertilization, weed control, seasonal color, many other add-ons that we could consider. Ultimately, when you sell your contract with these add-ons approved at a predetermined price using LMN, you can then go ahead and set up your crew app with all of these options so that each time the crew is out performing the work, they can click off the additional work that they've performed, and that's going to generate the billing automatically so that you capture the higher revenue per hour. And so you could go out and do that work each week at $80 a week per visit and just capture that, or you can add a few of these billable extras, have them quickly add these and really capture these in real time. So we want to be as nimble as possible and allow the people that are doing the work to have that flexibility to add the extra charges because they're pre-approved in the contract phase. This is how you can really motivate your staff to increase the billing and unlock the revenue per hour opportunity in maintenance. And also at the same time, create an incentive plan that really motivates them to do this automatically. So this is when you start to see, your crew supervisors putting a skid of mulch on the truck, knowing that they're out servicing 8 to 10 properties and they can put bagged mulch down at each site. If they put one skid of mulch down each day during the spring, they very easily unlock $5,000 to $6,000 a week in extra billing for their crew, which, at the end of the year really has a big impact, but it has a huge impact on the revenue per hour each day, each week, each month, and of course, on the year. And that's where we really see crews exceeding their crew budgets and unlocking a lot of opportunity for incentives. And this is really the secret, I think, in really growing revenue per hour, is making sure that the people in the field, the people who manage the field, understand how to get more revenue and unlock their own incentives so that the field crew supervisors are incentivized the same way as the business owner. So ultimately, what we want to kind of focus on when we're out selling work is we want to know, first off, what market segment that we're really looking at. We want to try to reduce things like travel time. We want to be able to sell contracts that have opportunities for extras built right into the contract. That's going to give us a lot of opportunity to really get this revenue per hour up over the course of the year. And then I think, when we're putting together pricing, we want to always lead with a low base monthly fee so that we're competitive, but then have opt-ins or mandatory opt-ins in some cases for gardening and disposal fees, mulch, fertilization, weed control, and many other things. Ultimately, you can imagine throughout the course of a month, this starts to add up. And so a little example here, and LMN produces the billing for these things automatically when you use LMN Crew and LMN invoicing. And the way it kind of works is, let's say week 1, we've got 24 bags of mulch at $18. Week 2, we've got 3 hours of gardening that we're charging at maybe $42 plus some disposal on the bag debris. Week 3, we hit it with fertilizer. We're back doing some more gardening. And as we're going through the course of the month, we're going to the property anyway. And we've got usually, in most cases, crews that are oversized to just do mowing and blowing and trimming. And this way, we're always getting the extra billing. At the end of the month, we've got a much bigger invoice. The customer's happy because we're actually servicing the property the way they expect. And most customers, or at least the customers we want, are willing to pay to have these upgrades taken care of as you go throughout the year. You can sell the mow and blow contracts and you'll always have high turnover, or you can sell these type of contracts where customers really appreciate paying the base monthly fee for the service and then paying for the extras that really make the property look the way that they want it to look. Again, the nice part is when you're using LMN, you're tracking these things as you go. It's generating automated billing so that when the customer logs into the invoice on the LMN invoicing platform, they can see the dates, times, what was done, and they can click and pay without thinking about it. Again, on the install side, we've got the same scenario. We need to find ways to sell work that has higher revenue per hour. And there's many, many ways to do this in install. But a lot of companies don't really think about this clearly. And I think often they end up selling a lot of low revenue per hour work accidentally because they don't really see the opportunity in looking a little bit deeper. So one thing that we did when we built LMN, particularly the estimating component, is we built revenue per hour into the analysis screen so that people can really see for themselves what the revenue per hour is going to look like on this specific estimate. And when you make some changes to the estimate, you can see the impact on revenue per hour in real time as you're estimating. This allows you to really make decisions on whether the estimate is really going to optimize revenue per hour, or if you want to look at maybe making some changes in the way that you're estimating or the products that you're providing. It's also going to have a big impact on you deciding what type of work you actually want to sell and what type of work you want your crews doing. There's all kinds of low revenue per hour install work, and there's all kinds of high revenue per hour. Sometimes we got to do a bit of both, but I think really focusing your marketing and sales and designs around work that is really good revenue per hour makes it much easier to optimize that metric. And so I put a few examples in here just to illustrate how much impact it really has. Labor, it's obviously the higher the wages, the higher the billable rate. And so when you have skilled trades that can work efficiently and get the work done quickly without defects, you can pay more money. And hence you can charge more per hour because they get more work done per hour and you don't have that warranty exposure. When you've got low skilled trades or people that don't know what they're doing, it takes really long to get the work done. It's usually not done right. And ultimately it costs you a lot more to do the work, but you're billing less. And so that's a problem. So I've always been a big fan of having really skilled trades who can work efficiently and then finding a way to motivate them to work efficiently and then measuring that in real time. So we want to get the right people to do the work as efficiently as possible. And if we don't have them, we've got to train them. And obviously we've got Greenius for a reason. We want to really help you optimize your labor and make sure you've got really skilled trades performing the work. It's a huge driver in really unlocking revenue per hour. Jobs with equipment. Anytime there's a lot of equipment and less labor, you generally can install more material faster. So if a load of topsoil shows up and you've got to spread that with shovels and rakes versus a skid steer, obviously that's going to have a big impact on revenue per hour. If that load of topsoil is $500 and it takes the crew all day to spread it, it's going to have a relatively low impact on the revenue that they're producing per hour. Whereas if you have a skid steer and they spread 6 of those loads per day, you're spreading a lot more material every hour with that machine. So the revenue is coming up much, much faster. And that's really where that opportunity lies with equipment. When you can produce the work faster and get more material in the ground, on the ground, into the job site faster, you're producing revenue much quicker than if you're doing everything with shovels and wheelbarrows. So materials, the next big major driver. Expensive materials increase production revenue. So anytime we can sell projects where there's more material or more expensive material or material that goes down quickly using machinery or other, it tends to have a big impact on revenue per hour. So that's kind of the big benefit of landscape installations versus maintenance. We're selling material. And so that material is generating revenue for every hour that we work. So that's a big, big driver, probably the biggest of the 3. Now, a couple examples just to illustrate this, drive the point home. More expensive pavers. This one was always a major focus for me as a salesperson in landscape. I needed to find a way to convince customers to buy the premium products. So how did I do that? Obviously, your portfolio is key, always showing them jobs that have premium pavers, not really filling your portfolio up with the cheaper products. Often when showing somebody brochures from product manufacturers and whatnot, I would always really show them just how much nicer the products are, but then also explaining that because the materials are a small percentage of the project price, the overall impact on price is not that high to go to the higher premium products when looking at the entire price. But for us, it actually has a major impact on revenue per hour. And here's why. If the crew is out installing, let's say 1,000 square feet, and that driveway, for example, takes 120 hours to build, if we sell a premium paver that's $5 a square foot more than the cheaper pavers, this is going to actually produce $62 more in revenue per hour when we add profit and overhead. And so on a project like that, it's an increase in profit of $1,121. And we're also recovering more overhead. So has a really big impact when we sell these premium products. On planting is a great example because I have always found that planting is one of the most profitable segments of the industry. And here's why. If we go out and put little tiny inexpensive plants in the ground, the opportunity is pretty minimal. On bigger or more expensive plant materials, the opportunity gets really, really good. So here I've got 6 specimen trees that would typically total around $3,000 if we used cheaper or smaller plants. Crew's going to take 18 hours to do the install. We'll call it 3 hours per tree. That's a good safe number for estimating. But we actually upsell the client to only $5,500. So we're saying, hey, why don't we start with some bigger plants, or why don't we put a few special specimens in, that extra big Japanese maple that really sort of sets off the front yard, whatever it happens to be. We sell them the increased budget. And as a result, in the exact same amount of time, we're actually increasing our revenue by $207 per hour. It doesn't take longer to plant more expensive trees or slightly bigger trees. So what ends up happening is we're just increasing the revenue per hour. So again, we're adding a lot more overhead recovery, which makes it a little easier to get to the break-even day for your business each year. But more than that, you're a lot more profitable. Your profit on those 3 people out doing that planting is $560 more in just one day. And when you start to estimate and work this way continuously, that profit starts to really stack up. This is typically the difference between the highly profitable companies and everybody else. It's kind of that secret sauce that some companies stumble on accidentally. Some people, maybe have a finance background and they learn this for themselves. And then there's people like me. I was just a technician running a landscape company. I learned how to do the work long before I learned how to make money doing the work. And I think I wasted a lot of years selling low revenue per hour work. Once I unlocked that, business became easy, scaling became easy, paying people really good wages, buying the best equipment, really being competitive in the market. All of these things became easy, but it's really what you're selling and how you're going about unlocking the revenue per hour in your business. On outdoor kitchens, this is my favorite. I used to try to put an outdoor kitchen in on every backyard that we did. Outdoor kitchens tend to range from $15,000 to $100,000. Yes, $100,000. Appliances are the biggest driver of the price. When you sell really high-end appliances and some really nice stonework and maybe a bit of carpentry, some nice countertops and some plumbing, things add up quickly. So wildly popular. There's many companies starting up out there these days who just do outdoor kitchens, nothing else. They're not even doing full landscape projects. They're hyper-focused on this area of the business. When you see those companies and you question how they're making a business of it, here's your answer. Extremely high revenue per hour. So you've got a total price on this outdoor kitchen of $28,000. 90 hours to install it. You've got 2 people working for a week on the job site. The stone encounters are taking 90 hours. Installing the appliances is only taking 10 hours at the most. That's 1 day just to pop, or half a day to pop them in for 2 people. So the stone encounters are taking all week for $12,000, but we're getting, on that last day where we slide the appliances in, we're getting another $16,000. As a contractor, you're typically buying appliances for 40% off retail. So there's a lot of profit in those appliances to begin with, much better than normal. So this profit number that I'm talking about keeps getting better if you're buying appliances at wholesale. Now, total project hours here are 100 hours. The project revenue per hour here is $280 per hour. The appliance revenue per hour is $1,600. That's incredible when you think about it. You can make that much revenue per hour with your normal profit margin and your normal overhead recovery off of installing appliances. So if you're not selling the appliances, you got to start. I can tell you that over the course of the year, I would do 20 to 30 backyards that had appliances of some type in them. And it was a huge revenue generator, but also massive profit. There's really nothing better. So that stone revenue per hour, really low, $133 an hour, still good in the industry. But when you look at the overall project, as soon as we introduce those appliances, it's $280 per hour. We would never sell appliances if we weren't selling the stone and the outdoor kitchen. So unfortunately, we can't just pick the best piece of the pie here. But $280 an hour for this type of work is incredible. It's definitely something you want to sell more of. So when designing, make sure that you're always working toward optimal opportunity on materials, sell the premium materials, larger, more expensive trees and plants, and definitely more hardscape features that include outdoor kitchens, and landscape lighting is very similar, if not better, than outdoor kitchens. There's just so many ways to really increase that revenue per hour when you're doing landscape install, estimating, and builds. When you're estimating with LMN, we highlight this number. When you click the analysis tab as you're building your estimate, never, ever send an estimate without knowing how much revenue per hour it's going to generate. First off, we always compare everything back to your budget. So if your budget had a forecasted revenue per hour, you should never sell work for less. You should always be trying to get significantly more revenue per hour than your budget. This way you can exceed your revenue goal and really unlock the potential of your company to go way beyond your sales goal without adding a lot more people. In the snow business, ultimately in the snow business, we've got many different ways to increase revenue per hour. Just like maintenance, we can change the way that we package things, we can change the way that we price things, and really unlock the opportunity. So a few things that we like to cover in the mastermind workshops. We really like to look at, first off, target markets and understanding how your market works in terms of pricing and billing, and how to really sort of unlock the opportunity to provide more competitive bids or perceived more competitive bids, and still allow for a lot of opportunity in the case that we have a heavy winter, or in some cases a winter where there's no snow. And so a few considerations that we want to look at. Snow management revenue per hour is increased by the price of the labor, the size of the equipment, or whether we're using equipment at all, and then, of course, whether or not we're using any de-icing materials. And the nice part about the snow business is all of these tend to be expensive. Labor, we're usually paying slightly higher wages in the snow business because of the standby rates. Typically, the rates are a little higher than they are in the summer. Equipment, bigger plows, larger capacity de-icing units, bigger equipment sells for more money. So therefore, we've got higher revenue per hour. And then on the material side of things, you can't get more expensive material per ton than salt. It's extremely expensive. The other de-icing materials, bagged products, liquids, all very expensive. And so every time we're out putting material down, we've got really high revenue per hour. So for that reason, I love the snow business. There's many other reasons I think it's a great business, but I think the revenue per hour drivers are all there in the snow business. Now, target market has a lot to do with it as well. We have to consider larger sites are going to allow us to use larger equipment. We're going to plow more acres at a time. We're going to put more de-icing product down at a time. And when that happens, we're getting much higher revenue per hour out of an operator in a big piece of equipment because they're doing more physical work with that big piece of equipment. Naturally, it costs more, but when you look at the revenue that you're producing against the cost of that labor and equipment, there's more opportunity for profit and overhead recovery because the profit percentage is fixed. And so as the revenue goes up, the profit goes up. As the revenue goes up, the overhead recovery goes up. So everything's better with higher revenue per hour. Jobs with more extensive needs for de-icing. Any properties that might need 24-hour service where you might be able to salt continuously. Sometimes some properties you can get 3 to 4 salt applications in one storm. Hospitals and schools, transit facilities, public parking lots for shopping malls. There's many different types of properties that require continuous service. And this is typically really good when you're looking to get extra billable work or higher revenue per hour because you're actually there more often, which is giving you a lot more revenue, but you're doing that high revenue per hour work when you're putting down de-icing product. And so definitely finding the right market and the right type of properties has a lot to do with revenue per hour, but then also how you're pricing it and packaging your work, I think has a big impact on the revenue per hour and a huge impact on your ability to really sell at scale and really grow the snow business. Typically what works best, a really low base monthly contract that allows you to get in the door, sell the deal, selling from more of a risk prevention perspective. You're kind of checking the boxes for their insurance and their risk management plan as a business, but then having automatic triggers for salt applications, whether you're going to bill per application or however that may be, or whatever the de-icing product is, not necessarily salt as we sort of shift gears and move into the future. Per inch billing, this could be an additional cost when there's extra deep snowfall. So this allows you to unlock an opportunity to charge more in the case that there's heavy snow. Could be a ceiling for the season as well. You get up to a certain number of plows and then you pay extra per plow. Could be relocation rates. It could be snow removal rates, hourly for the equipment to load, and then tipping fees and trucking fees. Many different ways to change the pricing and packaging here. So again, when you're looking at increasing the price, you want to find ways to add on more extra billing. That's going to have a big impact. Somebody's already there to plow a small property, for example, and they've got salt on the truck already on back. They hit the salter. There's an extra couple $100 if they're already there, and they're only there for a half an hour. The revenue per hour skyrockets. So we want contracts that are all in. So when we're estimating using LMN, again, you're always going to see revenue per hour. It's going to be the guiding metric when estimating. When you click on the estimate analysis, it's always going to surface that number for you. And you're going to see what your base hourly is. And then you're also going to see what your opportunity is on the other line items. So when the crews get out doing the work, we want to have all of these extras built in. And with the crew app, they can just very quickly update what they've done. If they've added a few bags of salt, if they've added a salt application, anything that they may have done that fell into that extra category, it's going to be sitting right there on their crew app. They just update what they did, and the billing is going to be generated automatically. Again, higher revenue per hour comes with pricing and packaging. LMN kind of takes care of the rest. The way that we do that, once the contract's in the crew app, your crews are out in the field collecting that information, creating their payroll data, creating the customer billing data, and increasing that revenue per hour automatically. And that's really why we built the estimating and the field app the way we did. It's really designed to unlock this opportunity in your business. So I'm going to wrap up and take a few questions here next. But before that, I just wanted to mention we have 2-day mastermind sessions. We've got a dozen or so over the next couple of months. Hopefully there's one in the city near you, or hopefully you'll make the drive or quick flight to see us. These 2-day sessions, I'm leading all of these personally. We're really focusing on defining who your customer is in your business, developing a sales and marketing strategy that helps you grow revenue and profit. We talk a lot about revenue per hour and many other things when we're trying to unlock this. Then we really talk, we move into a plan to develop your people, how to develop people using Greenius, using other tactics, proven systems that I've used myself in my own business. And then what we're going to talk about last as we sort of wrap up the workshop for the sort of last half is creating systems in your business that improve safety, quality, and efficiency, and using metrics to really drive that success, to create incentive programs that your teams actually understand. And those incentive programs are really designed to really ensure that the people out doing the work are trying to drive revenue per hour, just like you are. So hopefully you'll join for one of those. You can check us out on the website, or you can just snap a picture of this QR code, but use the code here to get the discount. Also, every week I'm going to be here. Every week we're going to have a different topic. I'm going to kind of deep dive different aspects of the business. And next week, what we're going to talk about is efficient routing and scheduling in your snow business. If you don't do snow and you're a landscape maintenance company, come anyway. It's very similar information. We're talking snow just because it's that time of year, but we're going to really focus a lot on exactly what it means to unlock that opportunity and really crank your revenue per hour, crank your profit by optimizing your routes and really making sure that you get the most revenue out of every shift that your crew is out working. So again, click that QR code, or you can hit us up on the website to sign up for the series. You're here already. How to do it.
Okay, Mark, I have two questions for you here from the audience. The first is from Tammy, and it was regarding the maintenance, pricing, and packaging matters slide. She was asking if depreciation is figured into this net profit number.
Depreciation is definitely factored in to our estimating. And the way that we do that is when you build a budget, you factor in all of the costs for all of your assets. And so the depreciation is always built in when we're talking about the profits here.
Fantastic. And Tara was also asking about premium materials also cost more to buy wholesale. So can you elaborate on how the profit goes up if we're using a standard overhead recovery and profit margin?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So basically when you, the way that the profit goes up is if it's a $5 premium and on 1,000 square feet, as I mentioned earlier, it's $5,000 more added to the total sticker price. We're adding overhead recovery and adding profit to that $5,000, which is increasing the profit and the overhead recovery per hour that we work. So regardless of what we pay for it, it's just increasing the price of the job. And because we're putting an overhead factor and a profit factor on top of that added cost, we're increasing our revenue per hour.
Perfect. That was it from the audience here.
All right. Well, that was easy. All right, everybody. Well, thanks again for joining. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you're getting signed up for the Mastermind Weekly, you're here this week, you can hit this QR code again. And if you want to join us for the Mastermind sessions, we've got some space. It is limited and many are filling up very quickly. But certainly want to have you join us for a 2-day mastermind session. So if you've got some time, check this out today and get signed up at one near you. And again, thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next week.